Hi and welcome to today's live chapter reading of the Sanctuary Chronicles box set by Kells, courtesy of Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. The moon had risen high, so high it illuminated the path leading into the forest like a welcome sign, or a warning. Valeria Lancaster arranged tendrils of her dark hair behind her ears before readjusting her coat, lightly touching her gun in the small of her back. Not that she would need it, nor the silver blades tucked in her boots. They were only backups, tools for desperate situations, just in case. Her fingers tingled as our power slowly surged inside her, reverberating on her companions who were slowly approaching, preparing for the hunt. One by one she felt them emerging from the edge of the forest, fellow witches and wizards surrounding her, walking the groomed lawn of the Lancaster estate. They were all enforcers, protectors of the other world. Valeria didn't stir until one hand touched hers and wove their fingers together. Her mouth curved as she met the twinkling eyes of James Cooper. Handsome, strong and powerful, her fiancé had the uncanny ability to make her feel safe and grounded. "Why are you so impatient, my love? You seem ready to run and catch those rabid dogs all by yourself." Valeria squeezed his hand a little tighter. She was glad he was present, eager and protective. With him beside her, she felt stronger. She needed his strength, his comfort, his simple companionship. More and more, in fact. When James was not by her side, it was as if there were not enough air to breathe, which was stupid, as there was plenty of oxygen for everyone on this planet. But when her father was in the vicinity, it was as if he sucked it all into his lungs, not leaving any for the others, even less for her. Or maybe the constant constriction in her chest was due to being the perfect daughter, the talented witch, the only child of a man who desperately wanted a boy, always striving for such an unattainable goal. Even as a child, barely able to grasp that very concept, Valeria sensed how being a female was lacking in her father's eyes. How could she become his rightful heir? How could she take care of the Lancaster legacy? And the worst part, she would never be chief enforcer, a role endorsed by the Lancaster males for centuries and denied to any female. If Lionel Lancaster, chief enforcer and rightful heir of the Lancaster dynasty, didn't produce a male child, the family, respected throughout the other world, would lose part of its power and prestige. "Stop that!" James tugged at her hand, bringing her closer to his body. "Since when do you read minds?" He knew her too well, especially when her thoughts took a detour on a less than happy path. She breathed deeply and leaned against him, his arms naturally curving around her. It was such a paradox that a man who looked like an aristocrat with his clear blue eyes and beautiful classical face could be so warm and caring. At a single glance, he looked like a pure magnificent sculpture, not a strand of his black hair out of place. Only his gaze and his smile gave him away. James kissed her brow and released her from his embrace to wink at her. "I don't read minds. I only know when you're distraught or pensive, and that's only the case when you think about your role as an enforcer, or your father." Easy guess for you after all. "Sweetheart, someday you'll have to confront him about all that, or you will never cease to fight with him." Valeria sighed as she caught a glimpse of her father walking regally towards the group, his eyes scanning each and every one of them as if they were his own. "It has been an extraordinary battle to make him accept you and agree to our marriage. I would like to enjoy a little peace before I start another war." "I don't know if you're a wise woman or a chicken sometimes, my love." James winked again, and she pinched him lightly at his teasing. As her father welcomed some of the enforcers, Valeria glanced around, noting a couple of new faces, young witches and wizards from prominent families who were only starting in this prestigious role, who were unsure and scared, as she had been years ago. Often they had been pushed by eager parents after the insistent recommendations of Lionel Lancaster himself. Her father believed in a strong, even overwhelming, police state. He was the epitome of tradition, and although he respected the institutions in place, He was not beyond imposing his vision on others. It made Valeria uncomfortable. They may be the police of their world, but there were so many more, other than witches, who could assume enforcer positions. Werewolves, fays. The one time she dared voicing her opinion to his father, he had backhanded her, telling her that she had a sick mind, that dogs couldn't police their own, and that was why enforcers had to do it in their place. Valeria never thought about others as inferiors or less dangerous. Her mother may have supported her father officially, but privately she opened Valeria to a new perspective, a mysterious and fascinating world. Anne Lancaster had a liberal mind, an inclusive one Valeria admired. Often she imagined her mother like a gypsy in disguise, capable of fooling everyone, even her own stern father. The more Valeria went to dispense law and order to others, the more she discovered ways of changing how her father saw the world. It tore at her soul, but who could make Lionel evolve when his beloved wife and lacking daughter could not? My friend enforcers, welcome. Thank you for your help in ridding this world of danger and making it safer for our loved ones. The small crowd was all ears. How could they not? Even as he grew older, Lionel Lancaster had an aura, a charisma like no other. He could convince and lead men with a single look. Where her mother had a warm, caring energy, her father had power. Our mission today is to locate and kill a werewolf pack deemed infected and now out of control. Each member of the Stone Lake pack must be eliminated. Once again, let me remind you that ill individuals are stronger and more unpredictable than usual werewolves. An entire pack? Valeria frowned at the idea. Infection in werewolves, like any other magical beings, was when the stream of magic broke, overflowing the mind and causing the person to become berserk, out of control. Besides the fact that a rogue werewolf was dangerous, they could risk revealing their identity to non-magical beings, humans. For centuries, they all hid their existence from the other people living on this planet. Apart from legends and movies, they all stayed carefully in the shadows, treading a very, very thin line between their life and the ordinary world and this one. Infection was not common to begin with, and nobody knew exactly what caused it. But for a whole pack to become infected, that was a first. Symptoms affected the behaviour. Another sign was the eyes, turning blood red quickly, the delicate vessels inside them exploding from the pressure of the energy bombarding the body. At that point, there was nothing that could be done. The victim was condemned. If the enforcer didn't kill him, his body would eventually shut down from the force of it. Valeria didn't listen to her father blowing hot air at his captive audience, as her mind reverted to past missions when she'd noticed those wild, bloody eyes, when she'd had to end their lives and watched their souls slowly seeping out, partly relieved, partly desperate to stay a little longer on this plane of existence. So many times she longed for a cure, for an answer. And when she delivered the final blow, her whole being wanted to take them in her arms and reassure the departing soul that everything would be okay. Now we will go to the portal and each team will reach their assigned location. The pack is not far from our landing space according to our last report. Again, be careful, and if you find them, send a signal. With a flourish, Lionel led his way into the forest until the troop arrived at a clearing. The trees formed a wide and perfect circle, encased by a clear sky filled with bright stars. The moon was still low, hidden by the foliage. The soft ground was replaced by an intricate pattern of stones, like a flowing mosaic. Torches surrounded the area. Valeria looked around as they all stood together. From that magic transport circle, they could travel to any place in the world. The only downside was they had to find a similar circle in order to come back. Otherwise, they had to use a more traditional mode of transportation. As her father started an incantation, one by one, the others following suit, Valeria felt uneasy. Her eyes skimmed the dark forest surrounding them, although she knew there was nobody nearby. Why couldn't she shake off that feeling of unease? From the corner of her eyes, she sensed James's questioning gaze on her. Power rose and swirled around her, engulfing the circle, about to send them off on their mission. When James turned away from her to complete his part of the spell, she stepped out of the circle. A second later, she was alone in the clearing and stood very uneasy. Chapter 2. The wind picked up and tickled the leaves, making it difficult for Valeria to discern any sound. For hours she had walked the forest, following her gut feelings. Her feet knew where she was going more than her brain at the moment. Her senses tingled, her fingers rubbing her palms restlessly, but she continued walking deeper through the trees. Something rushed at a distance. Something, or someone. As she started to jog in that direction, she closed herself with an invisibility spell. She wouldn't be able to hide her smell from a shifter, but if she stayed downwind, she would have an undeniable advantage. The moon, now high in the sky, barely glowed through the thick canopy. Valeria didn't see anyone at first, but as she approached, two silhouettes stood out behind a tree. Voices carried, one male, one female, but she couldn't make out the words. One form, the smallest, helped the other to lie down. Then the tone of the voices changed, like they were having an argument. Gradually the smallest form ran away, disappearing into the forest. Valeria waited for a moment before moving forward, the silhouette remaining motionless near the trees. A werewolf was there. She could feel it by its energy. Was it one of the Stone Lake clan? The infected one? The Stone Lake territory wasn't that far after all. Only one way to find out. She was no more than 20 feet away when the wind shifted and the figure by the tree gribbled. No need for a cloak now. She released her spell and braced for an attack as she stepped forward. As she expected, the form turned out to be male. He tried to push himself into a sitting position, finally half leaning on the tree. Unable to see his face, Valeria conjured a few illuminated orbs, surrounding the two of them. He would be able to see her expression, and she would his. The gribble sounded stronger and more menacing, so she stopped moving about 10 feet from him. Light glowed softly as she examined the shifter. First she checked his eyes, but apart from the electric blue confronting her, there was no sign of ruptured blood vessels in them. There was, however, plenty of blood on him. He had shoulder-length blonde hair and a light blonde stubble, which almost shone like the sun in dim light. His skin had a golden glow, not brown as so many other tanned men, and his face was set, his teeth bared. She knew werewolves to be exceptionally handsome, and there was the proof in front of her. He didn't have the same beauty as James. He was more savage, raw, with an undeniable air of danger. He looked tall and very built, as much as she could tell from his position against the tree, and with the clothing covering his body. Slowly she crouched down. The stranger breathed hard, and she could see more blood glistening on his side through his cotton shirt. "You're wounded. Let me help you." Valeria extended her hand, but the man moved back. "I won't hurt you." The blond man half laughed, half growled. "Don't come near, Enforcer." "I promise I'm not going to hurt you." The werewolf bared his teeth again. "Who do you think did this to me? I'm not fool enough to trust the word of an enforcer when you're deemed to kill us all." "You're of the Stone Lake clan." The man didn't answer and tried to sit upright. As he moved, Valeria saw the trail of blood dripping from his side to his leg, soaking his jeans. Even for a shifter, it was obvious that he'd lost a lot of blood. He needed help. She took a step forward, and he growled again. It was her turn to snarl, exasperated. "Stop that! If I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead by now. You're not infected, so you can live. And if you wish to live, I need to stop that blood. It's one of yours who wounded me, so you can fuck off." Valeria turned her head around, looking for fellow enforcers. Bad idea. The man attacked, grabbing her neck with his hand. Her heart skipped a beat. Even diminished, she had forgotten how fast and strong a werewolf could be. For him, a small amount of pressure would crush her windpipe and kill her. He could, but he didn't react. Kneeling in front of her, their faces inches apart, his eyes bore into hers. One gesture and she could end his life too. But something stopped her, urged her to wait for his next move.